Welcome to our Wednesday night connection classes. If you would please stand and sing Send the Light.
There's a call comes ringing o'er the restless waves. Send the light, send the light. There are souls to rescue, there are souls to save. Send the light, send the light, send the light. The blessed gospel light, let it shine from shore to shore. Send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine forevermore.
Well, good singing, and thank you so much for that, Joshua. And it's good to be in the house of the Lord on this Wednesday night. We didn't have a meal tonight, and you guys came out anyway, so that's really good. Good to see you. And then we'll be meeting together again for our meal on the first Wednesday night of each month. So the next one's going to be coming up in February, and we'll give you some more details about that as we get a little bit closer. But glad to have you here for these connection classes this evening. Let's have a word of prayer as we start tonight. Heavenly Father, we're grateful to gather together here in your house and in your name. And Lord, we ask that you would help focus and center our attention on you. And as we think about the course of a week, we know that people are facing many trials and difficulties and challenges, and the rigors of work and the rigors of life, sicknesses going on all around us, and the forecasting of paranoia and crises that surround us every day with the news and so on. But God, we come together this evening and ask that through the preaching and teaching of your word, that our hearts would be encouraged, that our focus and attention would be taken off of those things and set where it ought to be on our Lord. And Lord, we ask that you would use those things to help us to refocus as we move forward through the remaining portion of this week. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. You may be seated for just a moment. I have some announcements about some upcoming events for you to be thinking of. First of all, we are going to be having our season of revival this year. Starting January 30th, we'll have Brother Ben Everson. Some of you may remember him from our Thriving Thursdays a couple of years ago. He and his family came and sang with us. And some of the kids are growing up and kind of moving out of the house, so it's a little bit smaller of a family. There's still a good number of children to be with us for that. He'll be with us on Sunday morning and Sunday night of that same week, and we look forward to having them here to minister to us in song and in the preaching of the word on that day. The next week, Brother Don Strange will be with us, the pastor emeritus of the Winkler Road Baptist Church in Fort Myers, Florida. He ministered and served over there for a number of years, a few decades, I believe. He was over there on the west coast of Florida, and wonderful work there at Winkler Road Baptist Church. But he's since retired, and he'll be ministering to us on that particular day. We look forward to taking in all the wisdom of that guy, and he's such an encouraging guy to be around. Appreciate that. Also on that evening service, we'll have our missionary Michael Schmidt and his family, our missionaries to Brazil, will be back with us. They're home briefly, staying over in Tampa, so I reached out to them and asked them if they might come over, because some of you haven't had the chance to meet them yet, just based on when they were present previously. And then Gerald Fielder, former pastor of You wait your turn. The former pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church here, and the founder of Emmanuel Baptist Church, which is the congregation that used to meet in this building before all of this became Bible Baptist Church. He'll be coming and preaching for us on February 6th, and the evening service on that day will be having our Sweet Tooth Social that we do every year just before Valentine's Day. So we'll have a song over there, turn it over to him, and you can eat cake while you listen to preaching. It'll be good. And makes preaching a little easier to listen to, doesn't it? You can eat cake, and that'll be a good thing. And then Brother Ed Loney will be preaching on February 20th. That'll be Community Day, and then he'll preach for our revival meeting throughout the rest of that week. Community Day will be on February 20th, and we'll have one service out on the field, 10:30 a.m., with music from the Andrew Johnson family. And then maybe the neighbors will be patient if we once a year blast music toward their neighborhood. And then we'll have, of course, some carnival-style games and activities out on the field while all that's going on, and some food. So all the things that make for a good fellowship and outreach event. So that'll be a blessing. This coming Saturday, we're going to go out and promote Community Day. Because what good is Community Day if the community doesn't know about it and they don't come? And so we'll go out and start promoting that for our Super Saturdays of Soul Winning. And the first one is going to be this Saturday, January 22nd. We'll gather here. You just meet out in the lobby, and we're going to meet on those pews out there, have a brief charge, and then you'll pick up some maps. Some people might want to hop in the van. Some people might want to go independently, whatever, and pick up some flyers. And we'll take those flyers and place them on some doors around the community, letting them know that they are invited to come and be a part of Community Day on February 20th. We'll look forward to that. In the meantime, there's also a sign-up list in the lobby for our 25 days of prayer and fasting and our 24-hour prayer chain. You would have received a bookmark, a sized bifold pamphlet thing in your bulletin this past Sunday. They'll also be in the bulletin this coming Sunday. Make those available to you throughout the season for the 25 days of prayer and fasting. That gives you a guide for various ways that you can pray for revival for 25 days. And so we encourage you to stop by that board in the lobby, sign up for that, and then join us. I think it's 2 weeks away that we start our 24-hour prayer, 25 days of prayer and fasting, and a 24-hour prayer chain leading up to Community Day. So just so that you're aware of that. Something else on the horizon there? I think those are all the main things that are kind of in the immediate future. Prospective Members Party is scheduled for this coming Sunday evening during the Sunday evening service. And so if you have, so we'll be praying about those who will come and be a part of that. All right, we have some Master Club awards. Mrs. Hibbard, if you want to just stand down there, would that be easier for you? Okay. So when you get an award, you got to jump for it, right? And so touchdown. And one more announcement real quick just before we dismiss the Master Clubs. Hayden, if you don't mind bringing up that slide that you had there. We have some church merch available if you want to purchase some Community Day branded t-shirts. If you're going to be working or serving on Community Day, you're part of Bible Baptist Church, if you wear these shirts on that day, it'll help people to be able to identify that they can, those who are guests who are coming, identify who they might be able to talk to receive some help, assistance, and so on. And so you can go online and purchase that. Actually, if you hold up your phone right now and you move to the camera app and then you zoom in on the screen, you should be able to scan that QR code. So that'll take you directly to that website, and then you can order the, depending on how far away you are, you might have some issues with that. But then you can order a t-shirt there. They're not really all that expensive there. And then any of the proceeds that come from that website will go to the Teenagers for Camp. Also on that same website, you'll notice that there are some Heart for God, our annual theme branded things that you can purchase there, coffee mugs, bags, whatever. You just kind of select the logo and then select the kind of item that you want it to go on to, and then it gives you the rates that are charged for those particular items, and those are all based on the printing cost and whatever, and you can choose to have it delivered directly to your house and have all the Bible Baptist stuff you want. And so I encourage you to be a part of that. All right, well, let's stand together. We'll dismiss master clubs, and Brother Joshua's going to come and lead us in our next song.
I am thine, O Lord, I have heard thy voice, and it told thy love to me. But I long to rise in the arms of faith and be closer drawn to thee. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side.
You may be dismissed.
I don't know, no power yet? I'm going to try it again. I got a green light, so I should be okay. I am? Okay. All right, apparently we will not be long tonight because I don't have a stool standing up here. So, at least that's my story. I'm sorry for all those on there. I'm going to go get it. It's fine. We're in the book of Esther, if you guys want to go ahead and turn there. I mean, hey, people don't have to see me on camera to listen to me talk with this thing on. Neither do you guys. You guys can hear me back here, too. I feel like the great and mighty Oz from behind the curtain. All right. I like having my stool. Book of Esther, chapter 1. So we told us we were looking at the book of Esther from the perspective of God's sovereignty. We said last week that it was a book where God's name is not mentioned, but yet you can see God's hand working entirely throughout the entire book as far as what takes place. You know, as we look around our world today, I often wonder sometimes, do we forget that God knows everything that's going on? Do we understand that God has a purpose and a plan that we don't understand? You know, we might not be happy with what's going on here, what's going on there, how things are working. But do we ever doubt that God is in control? I don't think any of us would say, no, I don't doubt God's in control. We just don't think about it is usually what it is. We want to complain a whole lot about it, but we don't usually think about understanding that we know God knows exactly what's going on and that everything that's going to happen, God has a plan and is going to work it out. We do. It's part of being human, isn't it? You know, it's so easy to know what's right, so hard to do it, you know? And I think that's what happens to us many times. We don't question verbally, but yet we just don't understand or we just don't think near enough about the fact that, yes, God has his hand in everything. You know, being humans, I mean, you know, I was telling my wife, a guy that used to teach at my school, he's probably about, I think about 8 years older than I am. I worked closely with him in the math department. He passed away yesterday. And you can sit here and, heard a lot of the same questions as what, we heard here over the last many months is why, and, it's 61 years old, I think he was, 60, something like that. And in the long run, we're not going to understand. We know God has a plan, we know God has a purpose, and we know that things on this earth are going to continue to move on. And as we look at the book of Esther, we see God's hand, I believe, working behind the scenes more so than we do in any other book. I mean, when we look through Samuel and Kings, I mean, we constantly see how God is guiding and directing things. But in the book of Esther, I don't want to say it's much more muted, but it really is that you have to look and understand what God is doing rather than God saying, I'm doing this, 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 and this. You know, we looked last week and it all started off with King Hazarist, which, you know, whether it's King Xerxes or not, we feel that Xerxes probably fits pretty well with the time frame and everything else as to who it probably could be. He's throwing a 6-month party. He's got the biggest kingdom in ancient times from Ethiopia all the way over to India, 127 provinces, and it's time for a massive conference of all the governors. And for 180 days, we said last week, you're wining them, you're dining them, you're entertaining them. And no doubt, although it's not stated, I'm sure there were plenty of sessions on what to do when they got back home. And to finish it all off, and this is where I think we left off, there's a 1-week party. And what was this party like? Extreme? Wow, wouldn't that be a cool sport? Yes. What do you do for a living? I'm into extreme partying. I don't want to sound bad, but I think there's some people on the internet who I do think that is their job description. Yes? Pretty debased. Yeah, I think that would cover it as well. Esther chapter 1, let's take a look at the verses where it talks about this party. Because it all the way shows down to, verse 5 is where it starts. It says, And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan, the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace, where were white and green and blue hangings, fastened with cords, fine linen, purple to silver rings, pillars of marble, the beds of gold and silver upon pavement of red and blue and white and black marble, and they gave them drink in vessels of gold. Every so often I stop and read that, and I often think, man, what would it be like to drink my Coca-Cola from a vessel of gold? You know? I wonder if I'd pick up a metallic taste. I'm not really sure. No? Not from gold? I would hope not. But it would be really cool just once to say I had that much opulence that I could drink my soda from a vessel of gold. I'm just saying. I'd get some gold paint, but then I'd probably poison myself. It says here, though, and the royal wine in abundance according to the state of the king. And the drinking was according to the law, none did compel. For so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house that they should do according to every man's pleasure. So this is a solid week of do what you want. Was there some debauchery? Boy, that sounds like a good word. Yes, gluttony and debauchery. I'm sure there was, quite a bit of both. I can only imagine for 7 days what they did. I mean, I don't know about you, but when parties like that are going on, do you want to go to bed early? I wonder when these guys slept. You know what I'm saying? Have you ever stayed up for more than 24 hours?
Yes.
It's horrible, isn't it? I don't know how anybody does it. I can't do that. But I routinely work off of about 5.5 hours of sleep. I still right now, my wife yells at me, I don't like to go to bed before midnight. I get up at 5:30. I don't know why. My wife, what did you say? I'm like your dad. Hopefully that's not too bad of a thing. Hopefully in good ways. But it was a party like no other party to celebrate, and I think it was a good send-off party. In other words, remember we had said last week that there was a part of this gathering for 6 months that is about making sure that all of these 127 princes are in line. That every single one of them knows what the king wants done, what the king needs to have happen, and I want to make sure that you're a team player. I want to make sure that you're playing for my side and that when I call on you, I can count on you When it's tax time, when it's time to go to war, I need some, some soldiers. When I need, fill in the blank with whatever I need. And the easiest way to do that, make somebody feel special, right? And at the end, it's time to send everybody home. Now, you can take how you want to take it versus how I can take how I want to take it. Do I think that King Hazarist was actively involved in 180 days of partying before this final week? My answer, I don't necessarily think so, because I think a person who did that would have probably been dethroned during that time frame. I don't think Hazarist was an idiot. I know there were some idiots who got on thrones throughout history. Most of them did not last very long. I think he was incredibly shrewd. I think he showed up during those 180 days, partied a little when he needed to party, but in essence, he's a businessman. You run a kingdom that way. But for the last week, he has to actively get involved in this one. And we get ourselves to verse 10. It's the seventh and last day. And on the seventh and last day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine. By the way, nothing good comes from somebody who's drunk. Would you agree with that? We could sit here and talk about, the biological effects of alcohol and drugs on the body. But we understand that one of the key things that happens in all of these cases is it really messes up with your ability to make good decisions. You can take a look at what happened in these next verses to finish off chapter 1, and how you choose to look at it will determine how you look at three key things. All right? You have to take a look at the request that Hazarist asked of Vashti. What you think of the situation is going to determine, your view of that. Number two, you have to take a look at it and say, based on what you believe, that's going to determine how you look at Vashti's response and what you think about it. And then number three, it's going to determine what you think about Hazarist's reaction back to Vashti when she does what she does. And I know that all is kind of vague if you're not familiar with the passage. Most of us know what we're talking about. It says here that he made this request. It says here, he commanded, I'm not going to read the names, but you got to like a couple of them, Bigtha and Carcass. I don't know who would name their child Carcass. Probably not pronounced that way in Persian, though. The 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Hazarist the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princess her beauty, for she was fair to look upon. We'll go ahead and stop there and start with the request that Hazarist made. Now, first off, we know we're in a sad situation because he's making the request while he's drunk. His heart was merry with wine. He was in the midst of a party. So as you read through this, you can take a look at this request several different ways as I've studied throughout, the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks looking at this. Some people will look at it and say, he spent the last 6 months showing off his kingdom. Now, we forget, because we try to apply the way we look at the world today to the way people looked at the world thousands of years ago. And whether you like it or not, men and women weren't treated the same back then. Were the women really involved in all of these discussions? Were the women really involved in all of these gatherings? No. As a matter of fact, we looked last week that Vashti threw her own party or luncheon or whatever for the ladies. Hazarist has shown off all the awesome things he has, and he probably was a little bit of a braggart, but who in power probably isn't. And at the very end, he says, guys, I want you to see my wife. Now, some people would say that that was the extent. Just out of curiosity, do you know how most Middle Eastern women dress? And do you understand how they probably would have dressed 2,000 plus years ago? Realistically, very covered, including the face. Now, so that leads you to an interesting question. If I wanted to tell you how beautiful my wife is, you know, somebody asked the question, I saw this one on the internet, it was funny, you know, if I offered you $100 to kiss me or $100 to kiss the most beautiful woman, or no, I would offer you $750 to kiss the most beautiful woman, what would you do? The guy on the video said, I'd make $850 by kissing you. That's slick right there. You got to think through it. I didn't say it right? His wife said, I'll offer you $100 to kiss me or $750 to kiss the most beautiful woman. He said, I'd make $850 and kiss you. It was kind of a joke. Anyways, apparently didn't go over well. I'm sorry. Sometimes jokes just flop. Well, thank you. I appreciate somebody got it. I thought it was interesting because as soon as I heard it, the first thing my mind went was, oh my goodness, what's he going to do? He's going to get hit. That's what's going to happen. It's like, this guy's good. He's not going to show off her beauty fully clothed with a veil over her face. So then your question comes down to, so then what was the request? Was the request that she just show up and introduce herself? You're not going to show off her beauty that way. So here comes number 2 that I read that several people said. There are several people that said that he commanded her to come in her royal crown and pretty much nothing else, which in our minds could fit with the whole concept of the debauchery that's been going on, especially during this last week where pretty much nothing, you could have any desire of your heart pretty much, that he might ask this of a request. You could take a look at it that way. There's 1 or 2 people that I was reading said that in the Hebrew that it lends itself that way. I don't go with either one of the 2 that he just said, hey, come show up, or number 2 that he said, hey, I want you to show up in the crown and that's it. I think it comes down to this, and I think it fits the time frame. He wanted her to come in wearing her crown, but no face covering. He wanted to show off the beauty of his queen, but that was against their customs. It would have been a shame for her to come in front of a group of men that she does not know, in front of strangers, in this way, to in a way remove that veil. So now, how you view that request kind of views how you look at the rest of the story. Because we all know what Vashti said in response, right? What was her response? No way, Jose, right? If you read it, here was her response to the Chamberlain. It says in verse 12, but the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Do you realize that in that one response that we have from Vashti, that's all we got? Tell me what attitude she has when she said it. Do you know? I've told you guys this often, but in my days as principal at a Christian school, telling teachers that when you wrote a letter to send home to the kid, you have to remember what tone that parent's going to read the letter in, regardless if that's the tone you're writing it in. And more than once, I took one of their notes home and I said, I want you to read this the way the parent's going to read it. And they went, oh, it's like, yes, you might want to change your wording a little bit just to make sure. In several of my studies, I actually was reading. I read a short devotional from I don't know if she was a woman pastor or but it was a lady who was writing on it, who basically used this to pretty much say that Vashti was the first feminist. That she's sitting here going, I don't know how to do this without coming across wrong. So it's on video. I'm probably going to lose my job. I don't know. Ain't no man gonna tell me what to do. Now, I don't want to sound bad, but if I looked at my wife and said, hey, my buddies are over, I want you to come out and parade yourself, I would hope my wife would look at me and say, yeah, no, you idiot. And she probably would call me an idiot, wouldn't you? I know I'd get the look, and I'm pretty sure she wouldn't be coming out. Yes, but you realize that in many cases, people look at this and they put an attitude behind Vashti, which is one of, And I say this carefully because I mean, you have to go back and understand the time frame. That in essence, she comes across very rebellious, not just to her husband, but to also the king, regardless of the fact that the king asked her to do something wrong. You put that in that situation, and it shows that she is a rebellious person in the fact that she is refusing an order of the king. That is one way to look at it. Well, and that's where we end up taking a look at it from a second perspective. She refuses, and it doesn't tell us the intonation and the way the response was. But I'd like to kind of give you the way I think it fits. She understands the customs at the time, correct? If she goes in there and uncovers her face, you realize that brings shame on her, right? So you could say in a way she had a choice. I can either go in there, I can go ahead and take off this veil, and I can shame myself in front of everybody, but I'll make the king happy. Or I can stand up for the cultural customs and norms, and that would be wrong. Now, if you put that in there, you could still say that that's almost a selfish motive, right? Well, I'm not doing it because it would embarrass me. I'm not doing it because it would bring shame to me. But I'd like to take it a third step, and I think this is really where it hits. Who gets shamed more if she comes in and does that? The king does.
Now, is it possible that she was also like, he's just drunk and he doesn't know what he's doing and I'm not going to be a party to it?
I think that, though, that rolls over into category 1. Now, again, all I can give you is possibilities, and I've tried to do my best whenever I teach that if it's not flat out said, I try to let you know it's my opinion, correct? But we try to bring this into our world. Like I said, all studying through the Bible, if you're not careful, we tend to almost separate it and glorify it. It's like watching a Hallmark Christmas movie. You know there's going to be snow on Christmas Day, and you know the girl's going to get the guy or the guy's going to get the girl. It just depends on which way that script went this year or this week, whichever. Are we in Vermont or are we in Maine? I forget. It's one of the two, because we never have snow in Florida, except in a Hallmark Christmas movie. And sometimes we do that. So, yes, I don't know, but I would say to me that leans itself more towards that first category. I would like to believe, now I can't say this for fact, but I would like to believe that if she had not been a problem as a queen up until this point, did she sit here and look at the king and go, you think I'm throwing a party for a bunch of women? I don't think so. I think she did her duty, and I think she did it well. And I think knowing the request, knowing that it's the end of 7 days, and I think knowing what was going on, that her response was nothing to do with, yeah, I ain't going, he's drunk. It's, I will not embarrass the king by walking in and doing this, because in the end, it would be a huge embarrassment for him. Now, the problem then comes in is how does a Hazarist respond? And once again, how you view the whole situation determines what response you want to look at it from a Hazarist. Now, would you think that a Hazarist is right in being upset at Vashti? He wasn't in his right mind. Yes, you get a no. I don't know. Maybe. We get a lot of responses, yes? In my study over the past week, I was reading. I read a sermon about a guy who used this verse to say how evil Vashti was for telling her husband no. And I'm sitting here going, did you read the whole chapter? I'm going, oh my word. Let's read what it says, though, specifically. It says in verse 12, therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Is this a righteous indignation of somebody who says, you violated the law, you're not doing what the king commands, which is a rightful ordinance? I don't think so. This is, I'm drunk, you didn't do what I said, and I'm mad. Because how does he view it? I don't even think it's an issue there that the first thing he went is, oh my goodness, my wife disobeyed me. What is he thinking? She disobeyed me where? In front of all my friends. Now, you keep in mind that I personally believe that Vashti was trying to keep Ahasuerus from a much larger embarrassment. And his concern was, oh my goodness, I'm embarrassed in front of my friends because the queen, who I just told them all was going to come and show up and show off, and I was going to show them just how beautiful she was, said no. So when you look at it, there's a part of me that does want to say, as far as what goes on, that, he took care of a disobedience. I understand that. But deep down, it teaches us this. Wow, do we need to be careful about making a judgment when we're angry or making a judgment hastily? How many times have we told ourselves and our kids, don't make a decision when you're mad? There are times that you just need to go stew a little bit. My wife knows this about me. She'll come in and she'll want to, are you okay? Do you want to talk? My answer is no. I'm not okay. I don't want to talk. I want to be left alone. Leave me alone. I'll be fine tomorrow. But over the next whatever, I just need to work it out between me and God myself. You know what I'm saying? If you push me for an answer now, and my wife has probably heard me say this, if you push me for an answer now, I promise it's not going to be one you want to hear. Because I'm angry. And his response was to turn it into focus on myself, not, wow, I am so glad she spared me embarrassing myself in front of the whole country by doing this. He turned it into, oh my goodness, I can't believe she did this to me. And as a result, notice what it does. It says in verse 13, then the king said unto the wise men which knew the times, for so was the king's manner towards all that knew law and judgment. And the next, and it lists the gentlemen who were his advisors. And he says in verse 15, what shall we do unto Queen Vashti according to the law, because she hath not performed the commandment of King Ahasuerus by the chamberlains? So that's good. What does he do? He goes and asks his drunk friends. Now, you say, how do you know they were drunk? Because if they were some of his most trusted advisors, guess where they were that night? Guess where they were that week? At the party. A good advisor would have gone to Hazarist and said, Hazarist, man, just let it go. Just let it go, man. She's saving you from a whole world of hurt. You just need to drop it. But they're kind of like, do you guys remember reading in Kings with Rehoboam? David dies. Rehoboam gets set up as king. And the tribes of Israel had felt they had been taxed to death. And they look to Rehoboam and say, lighten our load and we'll be happy to follow you. And instead of listening to David's advisors who all said, you know what, that's a good idea. Why don't we go ahead and lighten the load? He goes to his friends, which says, no, put the thumb screws on them some more. And what happens? 10 tribes say, see ya. And there we get Jeroboam, and we get the split kingdom, which, by the way, was still all under God's sovereignty. It's not that God didn't know that was going to happen, but did God use it? Sure he did. You got a comment, or did I hit it? Yes, it was Solomon. Thank you. Not David. Thank you. Yeah, that was my bad. He got me. No, thank you for the correction. No, but that was good. I'm glad you corrected me. You're right. It was when Solomon passed away. Thank you.
Seems like these guys were just egging it on because how dare she not show up?
Well, and that is, again, we'll go back to culture. We'll go back to time. You know, whether we like it or not, again, looking through the eyes of current day, there were cultures back then that women were property. In many cases, they weren't viewed as valuable. And so even in a situation like this, the mentality is just like you say in response, don't let no woman tell you what she's going to do. How in the world are you going to let your wife speak that way to you? Yes, we do. But you know what we don't see? And then I'll go ahead and let you throw in. We never see where Hazarist went and talked to Vashti and said, what's going on? Tell me. Go ahead. Me? No, I've never done that. I've never been able to go look at a car like that, no. But that doesn't mean I haven't gone to Home Depot and eyed some stuff and eventually came home and said, you know what, I think I'm going to go buy this today. I get what you're saying. I think the whole thing still comes down to it's something that should not have been done. And as a result, not only would have been a shame to her, but more importantly would have been a shame to him culturally. The Hazarist. Yeah, the key advisor.
He brought this whole thing up and made a big speech about it, which egged everybody on.
Mm-hmm.
He made it sound worse than it was if he kept his mouth shut.
Well, and that's again where we go. When we put this idea of we're not in our, and I'll say it, we're not in our right mind because of whatever we're drinking, whatever we're, snorting, smoking, anything that they're doing. That's, yeah, probably all of the above. Probably not working on enough sleep. And instead of saying, let's sleep on it, let's figure it out tomorrow, let's get some clear heads, it's, we're going to do it all right now. Get me somebody here because I've got to fix it now. And he does throw out, and you are right in verse 16, it says here where he says, Vashti the queen hath not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the people that are in the provinces of King Ahasuerus. He ramps it up a notch. So he's telling Ahasuerus, she didn't just wrong you, she wronged us. And again, that's the way many people would have looked at it.
But that's what he said, because all the other wives are going to feed from her, and they're going to refuse to obey the husband.
And that's also where we get to. In verse 17 it says, For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes, when it shall be reported. Then King Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. Likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say, This day unto all the king's princes which have heard of the deed of the queen, thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. By the way, what's your easiest way to sell a point? Fear, isn't it? King, we've got to act now. If we don't do this legislation now, think what might happen. Nowhere do we see time or anybody who has a level head to say, we just need to put the brakes on and figure this out. And we see here in this response that God still has a plan at the end.
Well, these guys didn't even sit there and go, this is wrong with you to ask your wife. They're
Nope.
like, oh, she didn't do this. We want to see her. She wronged us too. So they wanted to see her just as much.
And that's a great point. Not a single one of these guys, that it tells us. It's possible that one of them might have, there's always going to be one who's probably going to say, okay, but king, but his voice is going to get drowned out. But nobody looked and said, okay, Hazarist, yeah, this is not something you should have done, man. So let's go ahead and just take care of it. And this is what it says. And this is where it goes down to in verse 19. If it please the king, hey, king, we got an idea. We think you should do this. Let there go out a royal commandment from him. Let it be written among the laws of the Persian and Medes that it be not altered. If we can, could we say overkill in the response? You guys know that we understand going back to Daniel. When the king made his foolish decree that you can worship or pray to nobody but me, knowing that once he wrote that and signed his name to it in his pride, it cannot be altered even by him. That when he realized that Daniel was still going to go do what Daniel's going to do, that Daniel was willing to take the punishment. And the king was incredibly sorrowful. And can you imagine Daniel looking at King Darius and saying, it's okay. You're going to throw me in a den of lions. What trust Daniel had in God. You cannot tell me that Daniel knew when he was getting put in there that it's okay. God's going to make them all into little kitty cats for me. Any more than you can think that Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael knew when they were going to get thrown in the fiery furnace that they weren't going to get burned up. But you know what? God had a plan there too, didn't he? And God had a way to work through it. And here comes Daniel out after the end of the night. You have to think about it. I find it interesting to go back to the story of Daniel, that the king himself came to that area and said, Daniel, are you still there? Did your God save you? Tells you what kind of testimony Daniel had, because no king, first off, would have gone himself, but number two, no king would have ever thought that there would be somebody alive, except because of Daniel's testimony. Anyways, all that being said, you're right, not a single one sits here and tells a Hazarist, this is wrong, man. This is wrong. We need to stop this. And as a result, it escalates to the point that we're going to make a law. And here's what the law says. First part of the law, Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. Now, if you want to say that she was defiant and rebellious and she was a feminist who's sticking up for her rights, then you would say that Ahasuerus was right in his judgment. If you want to say that Vashti was trying to protect the Persian Empire and Ahasuerus because of her love for him, then Ahasuerus is an idiot and wrongs her horribly. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us that they took her out and killed her or anything, which, by the way, could have been done back in those kind of times. Stoning or whatever else. I'm sure people were killed for a lot less back then. But no more brought in the presence of the king, and somebody else gets her royal estate. In a way, for our purposes and the way we think today, okay, I don't know how to say this without coming across incorrect or wrong or whatever. For her, it was a punishment worse than divorce. In our society today, if she had gotten divorced, she could go out and marry somebody else. He put her away in such a point that you'll never again come and see my face, which means I'm going to take away your standing, and now I'm going to put you into my harem as the lowest of the low, who's never going to come into my court again. But you're still stuck with me. And in essence, it's not like she got to go and march off and live her life. Think about the life that she got as a result of trying to do right. Now, several of the people that I write made it sound like I think Vashti was a Christian. I don't think Vashti was a Christian. I don't. I think she is protecting herself, but she's also protecting Ahasuerus. Now, that's how I read it. The question is might you read it different, and might you be correct and I be wrong? Yes, I don't think it's wrong for us to look at it several different ways, is there? Notice the decree that continues to go out. Not only is that said, but he also said in verse 20, when the king's decree which he shall make shall be published throughout all his empire, all the wives shall give to their husband honor, both great and small, and the saying pleased the king and the princes. Well, of course it did. It fed their ego. It fed exactly what they wanted that night. How long do you think it took them to draft this all up? Do you guys think this took weeks and weeks? Nah, good night. If it was in our government, it would take months and years to get something like this passed, right? I mean, come on. But here, this probably happened within the course of an hour. He's got his signet out, hitting the stamp on it. You know what I mean? And it says in verse 22, for he sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. Wow, look how many people got affected by that. And if you want to say overkill again, just look at culture back then. Isn't that pretty much how culture already ran?
Well,
Mhm.
that you have no say in anything you do,
Right.
whatever is commanded of you, whether it be the queen or any female in general, because they were property.
Right.
So I would have to question, was she trying to protect the king, or was she finally standing up for herself because she was raised from birth to believe that she is to do whatever is told of her?
The-
We even have that now
Sure.
still in this world.
But here's where I would say, and again, totally a good point. Here's why I would say I think of it the way I do. Because the difference between Vashti and some young maid being born in some one of these 127 provinces is she would have had the advantage of an education. She didn't get raised from the time she was born to, you're going to go out in the field, you're going to go out and gather or glean, or you're going to go sit here and sow, you're going to go sit here and milk some cows or some goats, or you're going to make some butter. Because, I mean, Paula Deen says everything, tastes better with butter. But, she was raised to understand. She was educated. So if you ask me my opinion, she's one who understood the ramifications of a Hazarist's request on a much broader scale. You have brought all of these princes here, you have brought all of these governors here to the point of trying to sell them, and you're going to destroy it by making me come in here and parade, and it's going to undermine everything that you just tried to set up. That's how I read it. Now, again, I can't say that I'm right. But again, that's the way I look at it and the way I understand, to the point of, I don't think Vashti was a Christian, but I don't think she was trying to do this to be rebellious. I think she was trying to do this to protect her husband. And let's be honest, I can tell you my wife more than once has verbally smacked me upside the head to tell me that's stupid, don't do it. Not because she's mad, not because she's trying to, oh my goodness, I want to, show up my husband. It's because she loves me and doesn't want me to do something stupid. Would I be right on that, love? Yeah. And you know what? A guy who's drunk ain't going to recognize that. That's why, we see today guys who go out and get drunk, come home, and then when their wife says something to them, they beat them. Beat her. You know what I'm saying? That's what we end up. And that still happens today. Absolutely. Memucan?
Had some way of trying to gain power or favor in
Could be to try and gain favor with the king, could be to try and up his standing in the seven, could be, hey, if I can make a Hazarist look bad, get myself worked up a little bit, who knows? I mean, the Bible tells us so much more about Haman and what Haman planned that we see in there. As far as this guy, he could have just been, hey, look, he could have been, or he could have just been another advisor who had too much to drink and wasn't thinking clearly. Yeah.
I just say, going back to Vashti, it could have been part of her training that she was supposed to make sure that her husband always looked good, and that her husband, not to make sure that he didn't do. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
Well, realistically, and I'll say that Vashti probably wasn't like Esther. Esther, and we'll get to all this as we go. She was an orphan. She was Jewish. She wasn't, somebody who was, well popular. She wasn't, in the right social circles. Vashti probably grew up the daughter of somebody very important. And she probably understood how all that worked. And yeah, I totally agree with that. As far as it goes, that she had the training and was trained in, I look at, and I don't know how you guys look at it. I don't follow the royals over in England, but you almost can't help but it if you watch TV. But okay, but there's a part of me that likes it. I'm just going to say just a little part. But you got to say that Kate Middleton, I think she does a great job for Prince William. I'm saying I think she's done a good job as far as supporting him exactly with what you're saying. Now you compare that with Prince Harry and his wife. That's a whole nother story. One of them, well, that again, whole nother story on that as well. Absolutely. But you can see where that could have been very important right here. You know what? Absolutely. And take a read on Proverbs 31, and we'll see what kind of virtues also matter, right? Now, as far as what it says as we get to chapter 2 and verse 1, I'll just stop here because, it's time. It says, after these things, when the wrath of King Hazarist was appeased, he remembered Vashti. Remember that many times when we read, we tend to read linearly, like there's no time frame in between. I believe that there is a decent amount of time in between chapter 1 and chapter 2, including the fact that it's possible that this is when, you guys know Xerxes went and attacked the Greeks, right? This could have been the time when Xerxes went and attacked the Greeks. But the point is at some point, it tells us this: he remembered what she had done, what he decreed against her, because he remembered Vashti. I would like to say, and I'll finish with this, that in verse 1 of chapter 2, when it says, when he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against her, that there's a part of him that realized he messed up. And he couldn't undo it. That's sad. It was how God used that. But it would tell us, boy howdy, from looking at, a Hazarist, we need to be careful how we make decisions, yes? We need to be careful when and what frame of mind we are when we make decisions, because there are decisions that we will make in our life that you can't take back. There are some that we can. But boy, there's some decisions, it's Pandora's box. Once you open it, there's no putting it back. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for your love to us and the lessons that we learn and study in your word. Pray that you just bless us as we go on our way. Be with those who are sick and not feeling well at home, Lord. I pray that you just bless them, give them strength. In Jesus' name, amen.